Hello learners, my name is Stephen Kariungi, and today we continue with our topic of discussion, and this is genetics, a Form 4 biology topic, and we have gone up to the point of discussing the DNA. So during our previous lesson, we learned that the DNA is a polynucleotide, meaning that it's made up of several nucleotides, and each nucleotide is made up of 3 components. We have a 5-carbon sugar, a phosphate molecule, and a nitrogen base, and of which we also discussed the base pairing, whereby we say that cytosine pairs with guanine, adenine pairs with thymine. Now, today we are going to discuss the role of DNA. So DNA has about 3 roles that it plays. One is to store genetic material. Is a store of genetic material, and this genetic material is stored in a coded form, in a coded manner, and that's what we are calling now the nitrogen bases. Now, number 2, another role of the DNA is that it transfers the genetic material from the parent to the daughter cells, from the parents to the daughter cells, through a process called replication. That is DNA replication. And lastly, number 3, the DNA translates. It translates the genetic material into characteristics. It translates the genetic material into characteristics of an organism through a process that we call protein synthesis. So the role of DNA, number 1, we have said that it stores genetic material in coded form. In coded form is a store of genetic material in coded form. Number 2, it transfers the genetic material to the daughter cells through replication, through DNA replication. And lastly, number 3, it translates the genetic information into characteristics. Through protein synthesis. So those are basically the 3 roles that are played by the DNA. Storing the genetic material in a coded manner or in a coded form, and this coded form is in form of the nitrogen bases, cytosine, guanine, and adenine, and those ones, and also transfers the genetic material to the daughter cells, that is from the parent cells to the daughter cells through DNA replication. Also translates the genetic information, the one that is coded, into characteristics of an organism through a process called protein synthesis. Now, I've mentioned something that is called DNA replication, and DNA replication is how the DNA copies itself. how it forms new DNA, so that that new DNA is transferred from the parents or the parent cells to the daughter cells. So we are going to discuss DNA replication. So DNA replication, this refers to the duplication, of DNA, or you can say just add something here, duplication of parental DNA into the DNA of the daughter cells. So the DNA should be able to duplicate itself so that there is sufficient DNA to be transferred to the daughter cells. And this transfer to the daughter cells is done unchanged, to the daughter cells unchanged. It's good to note that there is no change that is done. It is transferred unchanged through DNA replication. So the process of DNA replication, first of all, the DNA double strand first unwinds or untwists by breaking the hydrogen bonds between the nitrogen bases. So that is the first step before the DNA replicates. The DNA double strand first unwinds. It unwinds, and when it does so, it breaks the hydrogen bonds between the nitrogen bases, so that you have now two separate strands. So we have this as untwisted DNA. So the nitrogen bases, if it is cytosine, there is a corresponding guanine, adenine, there is thymine, adenine, there is thymine. They can follow each other, but they must pair with the corresponding pair. Guanine, this cytosine, there is guanine, adenine, there is thymine. So that is now the untwisted DNA after it has gone through the first step. It first of all untwists by breaking. It untwists by breaking the hydrogen bonds that were here, that were making it to coil around each other. Now after that, the information that is on the parental DNA is copied onto a new strand, in each case, whereby the parental DNA acts as a template. So we are saying the parental DNA is then copied onto a new DNA strand, that is a daughter DNA strand that is being formed with the parental DNA as the template. Is the one that guides what will be the component of the new DNA. So we're going to repeat the same, but now showing the new DNA forming. So the first one was cytosine, adenine, guanine, cytosine, adenine. So the corresponding pair will be as follows: T, G, C, T, T, G. So that is the way it looks initially. So we are saying that a new DNA strand forms on each of the parental strands. So a new strand will form here. A new strand forms there. Another new strand. And the information that was on the parental DNA or parental strand this is now whatever is being formed is a daughter strand. So if there was a C on the parental, it copies for G, A for a T, A for a T again, C for a G for a C, C for a G, A for a T. And also it happens on the other side, T with an A, G with a C, C with a G, T with an A, T with an A, G with a C. So the information that is in the parental strand has been copied onto the new strand that is forming. So you can see here there is a new strand that is forming. The new strand that is forming. So this one shows DNA replication. Excuse me. So the DNA replication, a new strand has formed to the inside of the DNA with the parental DNA as the template. That's what determines which nitrogen base will form on the new strand in each case. Then finally the new strand is released with the same genetic information excuse me, as the parental or as the original DNA. So that is the process that shows how the DNA replicates itself. So we are saying that DNA replication is the duplication of the parental DNA into the DNA of the daughter cell. And it starts by the DNA, first of all, unwinding. Remember, it's a twisted double helix. It unwinds by breaking the hydrogen bonds that were in between here, or that were bringing the two strands together. Then after that, we have it in this manner, in an untwisted manner. Then the parental DNA is then copied onto a new strand, a new DNA strand with the parental DNA as the template. So the parental DNA is the template that determines what will be copied onto the new strand. So if it's a C, a G, A, a T, the way the bases pair up, the same applies to the other. then the new strand is formed, and then it's released with the same genetic information as the parental DNA. So that is as far as the DNA is concerned. We'll have an assignment on the same. So the assignment, the first question, state 3 roles of DNA. Number 2, explain how DNA replication occurs and use illustrations to support your answer. So we'll stop there. Until next time, goodbye.
Hello learners, welcome to Manifested e-learning platform. I am your teacher, Monique Nyaga. So I'm teaching you chemistry. Our topic is energy changes in physical and chemical processes. In our previous topic, we talked about physical and chemical processes. These physical and chemical processes involves energy changes. This energy change can either be decrease in energy change or rise in energy change. Those reactions which leads to gain of energy from the surrounding, they are called endothermic reactions, and those reactions which leads to loss of energy to the surrounding are called exothermic reactions. In this lesson, we are going to discuss endothermic reactions. An endothermic reaction, I've said, it is a reaction that involves gain of energy from the surrounding. So in this endothermic reaction, we are going to do an experiment to demonstrate an endothermic reaction. So the experiment determine endothermic reaction using ammonium nitrate. So we want to determine an endothermic reaction using ammonium nitrate. So the procedure for the experiment, procedure number 1, need to wrap a clean plastic beaker 250 ml with a tissue paper. So wrap a clean 250 ml plastic beaker using a tissue paper. The reason why we are using a tissue paper is to prevent the gain of energy from the surrounding. The second procedure, you need to hold or to secure tissue paper So secure the tissue paper using a rubber band. So the rubber band is just ensuring just the tissue paper remains intact with the plastic beaker. Then our procedure number 3 will be measuring 100 ml distilled water. So measure 100 ml of distilled water and put it into the plastic beaker. Our procedure 4 is measure the temperature. Using a thermometer. We measure temperatures using thermometer, so you measure the temperature of water, which you've already put in the plastic beaker, then using a thermometer. Procedure 5, you add 2 spatula fulls of ammonium nitrate. Put 2 spatula fulls of ammonium nitrate solid into the distilled water. Into the distilled water in the beaker. Procedure number 6 is stir the mixture using a thermometer and record the stable temperature. And record the stable temperature realized. So that is the procedure we are going to use in determining the endothermic reaction, then using the ammonium nitrate. So the first one, you wrap a clean 250 ml plastic beaker with a tissue paper, which you have said that is to ensure that heat is not gained or lost to the surrounding. Then second, you've seen that to secure this tissue paper using rubber band, because the tissue paper can always come out of or from the plastic beaker, and therefore you need to hold it together with the beaker with a rubber band. Then procedure 3, you need to measure 100 ml distilled water and put it into your plastic beaker. Procedure 4, you measure the temperature of that water first. Measure the temperature of that water, and we are measuring the temperature using a thermometer. Procedure 5 is put 2 spatula fulls. Put 2 spatula fulls of ammonium nitrate solid into the distilled water in the beaker. Then after adding the ammonium nitrate solid, then lastly you need to stir the mixture using a thermometer and record the stable temperature realized. So the results, you are going to present them in form of a table, and the table will look like this. So you have the final temperature. So the solid we have used is ammonium nitrate. So the final temperature will be now the temperature which you realize after stirring the mixture using a thermometer and record the stable temperature realized. So the mixture in this case is ammonium nitrate and water. That is the mixture. So the final temperature is now measured in degrees Celsius. The initial temperature is now the temperature of water. So the temperature you measured the water before adding ammonium nitrate. So now the temperature change is the difference between the final temperature and the initial temperature. So that is the temperature change. In short, what is the temperature change between the final temperature and the initial temperature? It is expected that when you put ammonium nitrate in water, there's going to be gain of heat from the surrounding. So dissolving ammonium nitrate in water gains heat from the surrounding. So we expect that the final temperature is going to decrease. For example, if our initial temperature, let's say, was 23 degrees Celsius, that is our initial temperature. So we expect that this temperature to go down. So the temperature maybe will go down by let's say 2 degrees Celsius. So our final temperature will be 21 degrees Celsius. So the initial temperature, or the temperature of water, was 23 degrees Celsius. Then the temperature of the mixture was 21 degrees Celsius. So our temperature change will be 23 degrees Celsius. You subtract the final temperature, which is 21 degrees Celsius, and you'll get 2 degrees Celsius. So it's just 23 minus 21 degrees Celsius, and it gives you 2 degrees Celsius. That is the experiment to demonstrate an endothermic reaction. So an endothermic reaction generally is a reaction which leads to gain of heat from the surrounding. That reactions like these ones, they gain heat from the surrounding. So without heat, then they cannot be able to take place. That's why they have to gain heat from the surrounding for them to be able to take place. And that's why the final temperature is lower than the initial temperature. That is just an experiment to demonstrate endothermic reaction. I have an assignment for you. Define what an endothermic reaction is. So define what an endothermic reaction is. So that is our lesson today. Then our next lesson will be about exothermic reactions. Thank you.
Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.
Hello learners, today we will still continue with the topic angle properties of a circle. So I'm going to solve the question I'd given you, number 5, from secondary mathematics, exercise 19.1, number 5. So I'll read the question. In the figure below, O is the center of the circle, Ln and Pm are diameters. Show that Lm is parallel to Pn. So I'll write the question on the board. The question on the board, I read, in the figure below, O is the center of the circle. Ln and Pm are the diameters. Show that Lm and Plm, show that Lm is parallel to Pn. So to solve that question, there are concepts you must have. Number 1, when they talk of diameters, there are 2 diameters there, Ln and Pm. From the previous concepts, we had seen that a diameter will subtend a right angle in any of the segments. So let us look at the diagram and see some of the angles the diameters will subtend. Because from the question, before you prove it, a parallel line, 2 parallel lines, a perpendicular drawn from a point on one of the line should meet the other line at 90 degrees. So if you are able to identify some of those angles, they'll be able to help us to prove that. So let's see some of the angles formed in that. So let's start with diameter Ln. Diameter Ln. We want to see whether there is any right angle it is subtending. So if I prolong that and got that small chord there, I will already get a right angle there. It is a true proof that angle LMN is a right angle because it is subtended by which chord? Ln, which is the diameter. Therefore, angle LMN is equals to 90 degrees, which is a right angle. We get, let's find other angles also. Let's consider also chord diameter PM. Diameter PM. If we prolong this chord L to P, we'll find that diameter PO, diameter PM will subtend angle MLP, which will also be a right angle. So it goes without saying that angle MLP is equal to 90 degrees. We are not done yet. There are two more right angles we'll get. There are two more right angles we'll get. So we've got angle LMN, and we've got angle MLP. We can also get angle LPN, which is a right angle because it is subtended by chord LN. A diameter subtends a right angle on any point on the circumference. So it goes without saying that angle LPN, angle LPN is equal to 90 degrees. Reason, it is subtended by the diameter. We go to the last fourth angle, which is angle MNP. Angle MNP. It is subtended by diameter PM. You can easily see this is the diameter. It is subtending this angle in that segment. So it goes without saying that angle MNP is how many degrees? 90 degrees. We've got all those concepts from the diameters subtending angles in any of the segment. The angles will be 90 degrees. So we go back to the question where we are sure that these lines LM is parallel to PN. Number one, for lines to be parallel, a line drawn, a perpendicular drawn from one line to go and touch the other line, it will strike it at 90 degrees. It has to strike that other line at 90 degrees. So we'll go back to the diagram and see, does that happen? We have line L, M, and PN, which are the lines in question, which we have to prove they are parallel. Isn't it? So let's go to the lines. This is line LM. When I have a right angle here, it shows that MN acts as a perpendicular. MN acts as a perpendicular. And that perpendicular goes to strike line PN at what angle? You can see it is 90 degrees. That is only one end, isn't it? So if you prove it on one end, it is already a true proof, but we have still to get the other angles. Let's move to these other points. We have LP, which is acting as a perpendicular because it is line LP is meeting line LM at 90 degrees. And it is also meeting line PN at what degrees? At 90 degrees. That is a sure proof that the two lines are parallel. So to get to the proof, we say we now have LP and MN will act as a perpendicular. So for lines to be parallel, a perpendicular drawn from one line should meet the other line at 90 degrees. So let's go to our diagram and see, does that happen? LP and MN are acting as our perpendiculars, isn't it? So perpendicular, when you say perpendicular LP, it is rising from which line? Line LM. And it goes to meet line PN at 90 degrees. So you simply say perpendiculars they have acquired a name, perpendiculars. Perpendicular LP and MN from line LM meets line PN. They meet line PN, you can see, at line PN at 90 degrees. Therefore, line LM is parallel to line PN. That is a direct proof that the two lines are parallel, because the two perpendiculars drawn from one line go to meet the other line at 90 degrees. That is just one of the methods. The other method, there is an angle given there, x. That angle could lead us to having another alternative solution of proving that the lines are parallel. So we have an alternative solution. We have an alternative. So in the alternative solution which we have, I'll have to draw a diagram that will help us to solve that question. So that is our diagram, and we had an angle here, x, which is going to help us in the proof. So if we have a diagram, in the first one we used the perpendiculars. So you realize two parallel lines. If we have two parallel lines, if we have a vertex drawn from one line to go and cut the other line, it will form a pair of alternate angles which should be equal. So let's look at our diagram and see how that will come about. We have line LM and PN. MP is a line right from line LM going to cut line PN at point P. So if the lines are parallel, isn't it? So if the lines are parallel, the value of this angle, I can just use A degrees will be equal to B degrees. So I say parallel lines form a pair of alternate angles which are equal. In our question, the angles in questions, we are talking of if x will help us to get the value of A and B, then we find they are equal, then the lines are parallel. If LM is parallel to PN, angle A will be equal to angle B. So having that, I have to calculate the value of angle A and also the value of angle B. And then I compare their values. If their values are equal, the lines will be parallel. So let's go to the length of finding the value of angle A. So we go back to the diagram. That is a straight line. This is angle A. It is arising from an isosceles. So from the isosceles triangle, we find in an isosceles triangle, we have a pair in the isosceles triangle. The two values should be equal. So if we have OPN as A, we shall have ONP as A degrees. So there is another angle in the isosceles triangle which we've not got, but X will help us to get that angle. That angle is PON. And given that X added to that angle gives 180, therefore the value of PON will be 180 minus X degrees. So we'll go back to a concept that the three angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So therefore A plus A plus 180 minus X should give us 180 degrees because there are three angles in a triangle. So from that equation, we shall get the value of X. So we continue. A plus A, 2, we'll get 2A plus 180 2A plus 180 minus X is equal to 180. So since I'm only interested in X, I'm only interested to get the value of A. I'm interested in to get the value of A. So I'll leave it on the left hand side of the equation. So I'll have, the other ones will go the other side. So I'll have 2A. When this one goes, the other side becomes a negative, it's a positive. So we'll have 2A is equal to 180. Take it the other side, becomes minus 180. This is a negative. Take it the other side of the equation, it becomes a positive. So moving down, we shall have 2a is equal to 180 minus 180, you get 0. Then you remain with x. So from that, to get the value of a, I'll divide 2 on both sides. So a will be equal to x divided by 2. That will be the value of a. I've already got the value of a. My next step will be getting the value of b to ascertain whether it is equal to a, because the series of alternate angles I was talking of were a and b. So I'll go back to that diagram. Given that PON is 180 minus x, it is directly opposite to LOM. So directly opposite angles are equal. So this angle will be what? 180 minus x. And since this one is also isosceles, this value of angle MLO will be B degrees. B degrees. So right from what I did here, it will also be therefore from the diagram B plus B. B plus B plus 180 minus x. It will give us 180 degrees, because those are 3 angles in a triangle. So let's move ahead with the equation. B plus B, 2b plus 180 minus x should give us 180 degrees. So I'm interested in B. So B will remain on the left-hand side of the equation. So we move ahead by saying 2B is equal to, you take 180 the other side, it becomes 180 minus 180 plus, x now becomes plus. So 180 minus 180 is 0. Therefore, 2b is equal to x. Therefore, b is equal to x divided by 2. So you find that the value of a is equal to b. So you write a is equal to x divided by 2 degrees, and b is equal to x divided by 2. Therefore, a is equal to b, and therefore line LM is parallel to line PN. So that is a proof that the two lines are parallel, because we found out that the pair of alternate angles they are forming, it will always happen in when two lines are parallel. A is equal to B. And the two lines, the two angles are alternate and equal, and we have proved the value is x divided by 2. So that is the alternative solution, which we worked using the value of angle x. We've come to the end of the lesson today, so I'll give you an assignment from the learner's book. The assignment. Thank you. That's what we'll do for the assignment. See you in the next lesson. Hello learners, welcome to Manifested Online Classes. My name's James Kenyani. We are still continuing to build up on our topic on loci. So last time we had solved some questions and given you 2 more to solve at home. So the 2 questions given are here on the board as the assignment I had given you. So question 7 talks of state and sketch the locus of the variable point t, which is equidistant from 2 fixed points P and Q. The second question talks of also stating and sketching the locus of a point P, which is always the same distance from a fixed point X. So we go to the solutions. We go to the solutions in question 7. For question 7, I need geometrical instruments, that is a pair of compasses and a ruler. I need a pair of compasses. For those who don't know a pair of compasses, it is this one, and that is the ruler. So I'll need these to internalize or to explain that. So we go to the question. The variable point t, which is equidistant from 2 fixed points P and Q. There is a word there, equidistant. That's in fact the law. Equidistance. Another simplification of the word equidistant is at equal distances. Equidistance, at equal distance from the 2 points. So I'll go straight to that. The first thing you do, you have the point, a variable point t. So there are 2 points P and Q. So first of all, draw a straight line. You'll draw a straight line. On the straight line, you'll get there are 2 points, P, Q. So you have your point, just use this. We have P and the other point is what? Q. Those are the 2 points you have. So that point, variable point, is the one we have to get. And it should be at equal distances always from point P and Q. In short, they are just actually asking you to get a perpendicular bisector of line PQ. If you get the perpendicular bisector, it will be any point on that line will be at equal distances from point P and Q. So I'll put my ruler down and use my compasses. So to bisect that, I'll go at P. I'll go at P. With that compass, ensure that the first arc is at least more than a half the line PQ. More than a half. So strike an arc above, strike an arc below. Remove it at P, move to Q, and using the same distance, strike an arc below, strike an arc above and below. Then remove that. Remove that. You realize this was rubbed a bit, so that was just the point P and Q. So the two intersections I'll join using a ruler. I'll join using a straight edge, a ruler. So I move my ruler there. And draw my line. I'll draw my line. The line I've drawn is actually the perpendicular bisector. I've actually got the perpendicular bisector. This is perpendicular bisector of PQ. So any point on that line, any point, whether it is here, if you measure the distance from P to Q, it will be the same as from that point T to Q. So the locus of that point, you come and write your answer. The locus of the variable point T will be the perpendicular bisector of PQ. That is your solution. It will be the perpendicular bisector of PQ. Any point on that line will be at equal distances from P and Q. So the locus is actually the perpendicular bisector of that line PQ. We'll move to the second question. A point P, which is always the same distance from a fixed point X. So just to start that, I'll need a pair of compasses. I'll need a pair of compasses. So we go to the solution of question 8. Question 8. Question 8. So there is a law there which is always at the same distance. Always at the same distance. So I'll have in question 8 to identify what? My point X. Identify your point X. So since it is at equal distances, you can actually get a good picture of this. For those who did tethering, when you have a cow, you tether it on a peg. It is able to move around. The maximum it can stretch will always be equal distance from the center of the peg. But this is a point which is free to move up, down in any direction. So I'll take my pair of compass, this one. I'll come with X as my center and with an equal distance with X as my center. I'll draw, you know it's equidistant, so I'll draw that. I'll draw that. So that is from point X. So one of the path the point will take is what? What can you see on the board? Everybody knows that is a what? A circle. Everybody knows that is a circle. That is one of the paths that variable point P will take. But the point A is free. You are free to turn it in 3 dimensions. So it is even able to take up other paths. It is even able to take up other paths so long as it is as a. So you can actually, I dot that to show that. So I can write here other paths taken, other paths taken to complete a sphere. So don't wonder what a sphere is. A sphere is like a ball, round in shape, an orange, a sphere. So the answer to that, the locus will be, so you'll come and write the locus of the point in question P, the point P will be a circle, or a sphere, It will be a circle or a sphere. So having solved question 8, before the conclusion of this lesson, I'll be able to give out 2 more questions which will solve at your own free time. So I'll write the questions on the board. So I'll get some space, or I have space there. Question 9, assignment. So those are 2D rotated through 180 degrees from A. Having given the 2 questions, it is a pleasant time for you to go and get the solutions for that as you continue remembering what we defined as a locus. So thank you very much for your audience and have a nice time. Bye. Hello learners. Today we are going to continue with our topic, angle properties of a circle. In the last lesson, I had given you an exercise from the learner's book, exercise 19.1, question 4 and 5. And I hope you had done the questions. So I'm going to write the questions on the board, and before I write them, I'll read question 4, which I'm going to start with. I read question 4. In the figure below, O is the center of the circle. Show that the reflex angle POR is twice angle PQR. So I write the question on the board, then I will solve it. So that is the question. In the figure below, O is the center of the circle. Show that the reflex angle POR is twice angle PQR. So before we go to the solving of the questions, we have to get the underlining concepts before we get the angles. So one of the things we'll do, we'll introduce a chord running from Q right through O to the other edge of the circle. It will actually just be like the diameter. So where it touches the circle, I can give it a point D. That is point D. After getting that, you'll find when I have that chord QD, QOD or QD, I can get, I'll introduce another line there, DR, and also introduce another line there, which I'll call it PD. So before we continue, there are concepts there you should get. In the previous lesson, you learned that if the diameter is a chord, it forms a right angle, it subtends a right angle in each of the segments. So if I come on the board, I'll use chord QD, which is actually what? Chord QD is the diameter. So this angle, it is subtending, isn't it? There is an angle it subtends here. The whole of that angle, isn't it? Angle QRD is a right angle because it is subtended by a chord QD, which is the diameter. But now, meanwhile, I'm interested in angle DRO because it is going to help me to get the reflex angle. So the first thing, I'll get angle DRO, angle DRO. What is it? Because I've already told you that the angle subtended by the chord QD, the angle subtended by the chord QD, which is QRD, is equal to 90 degrees. So to get DRO, it will be equal to 90 minus Y. So I'll actually write here 90 minus Y degrees. That is angle DRO. I'll also come and get angle DPO. The same thing happens. Since this one is the diameter, it subtends a right angle here. It will subtend a right angle. Similarly, angle DPO will be equal to what? It will be equal to 90 minus X. I'll get that angle, isn't it? It is 90 minus X. It is right here, this angle. Minus X. So I've now got one of the angles, and if you look well, this is the radius, this is the radius. So this is an triangle POD. Triangle POD is isosceles, and triangle DOR is isosceles. So a pair of the angles is equal. So this angle is equal to that angle. So having got that, I have to prove by getting the actual value of the reflex angle. I'll go straight to getting the reflex angle POR. So the reflex angle they are asking for, POR, it is this angle, POR. For many who do not know, a reflex angle is greater than 180, but less than what? 360 degrees. So let's go straight to getting our reflex angle, POR. If you look well at the diagram, angle POR, that reflex angle, is the sum of two values of angles POD and DOR. Isn't it? From the diagram, you look, if I have POD and I add to ROD, I'll get the value of the reflex angle. So reflex angle POR is equal to the value of angle POD plus the value of angle DOR. So if you get the value of the two angles, you'll get the value of that reflex angle. So we go back to what I told you about an isosceles triangle. Two pairs, a pair of the angles, two angles are equal in isosceles triangle. So if I have here 90, this is an isosceles triangle. Are we together? So this value is the same as that value. So if I want to get POD, isn't it? If I want to get POD, I'll take the sum of the angles in a triangle, which is 180, subtract the value or the sum of the two values of the isosceles triangle. So I'll start with POD, isn't it? I'll start with this one, POD. POD is equal to the sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So I'll take that sum, 180 degrees, subtract the other pair, which is equal. So it will be this angle plus that angle, which is just simply twice 90 minus x. Twice this angle subtracted from 180, I'll get POD. So I'll go straight, because they are also testing if you you know how to open your brackets. If you open them wrongly, you'll lead to a wrong answer. So if here we have 180, here we have minus 2 times 90, we get minus 1a minus 180 degrees. Minus 2 outside the bracket multiplied by minus x, you'll get a positive. A minus times a minus, you get a positive. So you'll have minus 2 times minus x will give you what? Positive what? 2. So if you work that, 180 minus 180 is 0 plus 2x. So that gives you which value? 2x. So the value of angle POD is 2x. I have now got one of the angles. I need to work out the other angle. I need to work out angle DOR. So I'll come down here, angle DOR is equal to, I'll go to the diagram. Where is DOR? You should actually see where the angle is. DOR. The same concept works. The sum of angles in a triangle is 180 and the other pair is equal. So the working will be almost the same as what happened in the other isosceles triangle. So you'll get the sum, which is 180 degrees. Subtract twice. Subtract twice. This is 90 minus y. The other one is 90 minus y, and they are equal. So it will be twice 90 minus y. The computation will be the same again here because we still have our 180. So it comes to 180 minus 2 times 90, you get minus 180. Minus 2y times minus y, minus times minus positive. So you get which value? Plus 2y. So the value of angle DOR is equal to what? 2y. Having got the values of the two angles and their sum gives the reflex angle, you'll get now angle POR. You need to indicate again angle POR is equals to angle POD, angle POD plus angle DOR. Which gives you 2x plus. Now that is the value of the reflex angle we are looking for. Its value is now 2x plus y. So we have to go back and get the value of PQR so that we prove it is twice the value of the reflex angle we got. So to get that, I have to introduce a chord in my diagram, and that chord is PR. So I'll introduce a chord here. Once you introduce a chord in a circle, it will cut that circle into two regions. And if you look at the regions, we have the region above here is smaller than the region below. So the smaller region acquires the name minor segment, and the bigger region acquires the name major segment. Therefore, from that chord, we get a concept that the angle subtended by that chord in the minor segment added to the angle subtended by that chord in the major segment, they should give you 180 degrees. They should give you 180 degrees. So we should go straight to finding the value of PQR. Now, rising from that concept that PQR added to PDR, their value is 180 degrees. So to get PQR angle PQR plus angle PDR, their sum should give you 180 degrees. So it goes without saying that angle PQR will be equal to angle PQR will be equal to 180 degrees subtract angle PDR. So we'll go back to the diagram. Where do we get angle PDR? Angle PDR is equal to angle PDO plus which angle? Plus angle RDO. RDO. So when we go back to the diagram, we are going back to what we had talked about, the isosceles triangle. So having, if this one is 90 minus x, the other pair is angle PDO. So if this one is 90 minus x, PDO will also be equal to what? 90 minus x. I would have got PDO. It is equal to 90 minus x because you have the other pair and they are always equal. The other pair is 90 minus x. And RDO, the same thing. RDO. Look at that isosceles triangle. This angle RDO is also equal to DRO. And I know the value of what? DRO. So it will be 90 minus x plus 90 minus y. 90 minus x plus 90 minus y. So you go to a computation. Start with this 90 plus 90, what do you get? 90 plus 90, you'll get 180 degrees. Then we have minus x minus y. That is the value of angle PDR. Isn't it? PDR. But to prove, the actual angle I should use to prove is angle POR. Isn't it? The actual angle I should to prove is PQR. And from this one I've already written PQR is equal to 180 subtract angle PDR. Isn't it? And we knew that PQR from the previous, whatever we got there, is equal to 180 degrees minus what? Angle PDR. So this comes to 180 degrees. Put it into brackets because of some computation that will be there, minus PDR, which is 180, minus x, minus y. At that point, you have to be very careful when we are opening the brackets. Isn't it? When you are opening the brackets here, it will be 180 minus 180. What do you get? 180 minus 180, it will cancel out. So you'll eventually have 180 minus 180 degrees. When you are opening the brackets here, we have minus. A minus times a minus, we get a positive. It's like having minus 1 outside times minus 1x. It will turn to positive, so it will be plus x. When you move there, we have minus 1 here. When you have just a minus like that, it's like having minus 1. Minus 1 times minus 1y. That changes. Negative times negative becomes a positive. So you get what? Plus y. The final answer will give you 180 minus 180 is 0. So you'll remain with x plus y. That is the value of which angle? P, Q, R. You'll go back to what they asked you, isn't it? Prove that PQR, the reflex angle, POR is twice PQR. So you write exactly what you've got. What did you get for POR? Isn't it? So POR, you say POR is equal to twice PQR. You'll substitute in whatever you get. We got POR is what? 2x plus 2y is equal to PQR. We have already got that value. It is what? X plus, which is equal to 2x plus 2y. Therefore, reflex angle POR is equal to twice the value of angle PQR. We've come to the end of the lesson where we solved question number 4 of exercise 19.1 from the learner's book. So in the next lesson, we are going to solve question 5. So make sure before you come for the lesson, make sure you've worked out the question. So have a good day.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello, my dear students. Welcome to our today's history and government lesson. I'm your teacher, Conan Gakure. I'm glad you are able to join me as we continue to learn about international relations in the world. And then we have been specifically, we have started looking at the Commonwealth as an international organization that is used or that is concerned with promotion of international peace. In our previous lesson, we learned or we defined what Commonwealth means, and we said it is an association of independent states that were part of the British colony or were part of British Empire. So these are states that gained independence and were colonized or were under the British Empire. So they came together to form this organization known as the Commonwealth. We said it was instituted in 1947. 1947 is the year when it started to operate as an organization, and this happened after the independence of India, right? India was a colony was a
colony of Britain, and it is in Asia. So after it got its, or after India got her independence as a state, there was need for them to, or for the British to, together with the other dominions that had become autonomous before. Remember, we talked about the statute of the Westminster that allowed dominions within the British Empire to become autonomous, or to have their own autonomy as a dominion. So they came together and decided to craft the Commonwealth, that members who are part of the British Empire could be able to join. So membership was open and it was free to any person who wants, or to any country, not person, any country or any member or any state that desired to join this organization was allowed to join. The only allegiance was that they could have to pay allegiance to the crown. They could accept the king or the queen of England as the head, as the overall head of the organization. So today we are going to study about the features. We're going to learn about the features of the Commonwealth. Features of the Commonwealth. That is what we are going to learn about in our today's lesson, and later on we are also going to learn about the ideals and principles of Commonwealth. So let us start with the features. What characteristics do the nations, what characteristics do the nations that belong to the Commonwealth have in common? What encompasses this, or what makes them to be members of the Commonwealth? So the first characteristic is that they accept the Queen as the head of the organization. That is the first characteristic. All the nations, or all the members of this Commonwealth, accept the Queen as the head of the organization. That is the first characteristic. So the Queen is the overall head of this organization. Number two, they have similar education. They have similar education system. That means their education is almost similar. At the start, it was identical. Whatever they were teaching was identical. But now, with time, with development, and with changes in the world, countries have made, or have adapted the education system according to the local needs. What are the situation in the country? So countries have been allowed to adapt the education system according to their necessities. What is it that they need to learn? What does the nation require? So with time, this has changed, but they have similar education system, not identical. Number three, or the next feature of the Commonwealth countries, the use of English as a common language. They use English as a common language. So English is their common language of communication. Actually, it is used as the official language. In these countries, the official language of communication is English. Though the countries or the nations may have other languages that are spoken in that nation, but the official language of the Commonwealth countries is English. So they have English as the common language. The next factor, number 4, they have cooperation. They cooperate in the field of education. So they have cooperation. They have similar training on the field of education. And then number 5, they appreciate. Members appreciate the culture of other member states. So they appreciate other people's culture or culture of the other members. Remember, these are different nations. As we mentioned in our previous lesson, there are so many countries or members of the Commonwealth who are drawn from different regions. For example, in Africa, we have members of Commonwealth in West Africa, we have members of Commonwealth in East Africa, we have members of Commonwealth in South Africa. These are people with different cultures. They have different beliefs. So a feature of Commonwealth is that each and every country, right, recognizes and appreciates the cultures of other members. And then number 6, they participate. All members participate in the Commonwealth Games. Commonwealth Games. Members participate in Commonwealth Games. So there are games that are held regularly involving all the members of the Commonwealth. So they come together and compete. There are athletics. There are all manner of games. So these encourages interaction. So as they compete against one another, countries are able to learn from one another. Countries are able to travel. People are able to travel from one country to the other because the Commonwealth Games are held in different nations. So this allows the members to interact. And then number 7, or the next feature of the Commonwealth, they have economic ties. These countries help one another. The countries that have stronger economies, that have more developed economies, they help the poor nations. So in case there is a nation that is struggling, the more developed countries are able to come together and aid these poor nations. They also help in having trading activities. So countries in the Commonwealth have relaxed restrictions. They have free trade amongst themselves. They agree that members of the Commonwealth are able to trade freely in the Commonwealth area. That is about economic ties. And then there is consultation, number 8. Consultation and exchange. Consultation and exchange of information. There is consultation and exchange of information. So the member states or the heads of these states or members of the Commonwealth come together and exchange ideas. They consult whenever there is a problem or there is a challenge facing that is facing all the nations. They come together and exchange ideas. How best are we going to solve these information? So they also solve these problem. Pardon me. So they they exchange information to help them adjust better and to help them have better lives. And then the second last feature is that they have a common heritage of public institution. They have a common heritage of public institutions. So being part of the British Empire, they adopted most of their public institutions from the British. So you find the biggest or the most significant feature is the parliamentary system. Parliamentary system. Remember that in Britain they have a monarch, but that monarchy is not an absolute monarch. They have a constitutional monarchy that is directed. We have the prime minister who is who heads or who has controls the affairs of the nation, and we have a very strong parliamentary system. So this is an example of an institution that was adopted by most of the members of the Commonwealth. So these they borrowed from Britain that had colonized most of them. And then lastly, they form a power block. They formed a power block. They formed a power block that has standards. That has standards and ideals. So the Commonwealth became a block. The countries became a block that they make decisions together, and then they make decisions together and accept or make decisions together. So they act as a block. So that is another feature. But now, of importance to note here, they have standards and ideals. That means members of the Commonwealth have certain beliefs. They have certain standards that they have to meet. They have the ideals that drive them, or that along which they have been crafted. So let us now look at what are these ideals, what are these standards that are held by the members of the Commonwealth. So the principles and ideals of Commonwealth. Nations. So what are these principles, and what are the ideals that each and every member of the Commonwealth organization is supposed to adhere to, is supposed to follow? So before we mention them, it's good to note that these were crafted. They were crafted by the heads of. They were crafted by the heads of nations. They were crafted by the heads of nations. So they are the people who came together and crafted these principles. They had a conference that was held in Singapore. There was a conference that was held in Singapore in the year 1971. There was a conference that was held of the heads of nations. All the heads of the Commonwealth nations came together in Singapore and had a conference that instituted the principles that are now followed by the Commonwealth. So they formed the Commonwealth Declaration. So they formed the Commonwealth Declaration of 1971. So they formed a document that is referred to as the Commonwealth Declaration of 1971. So these heads of states, or heads of stations, or heads of government, right, came together and formed a declaration. They pledged several things as their ideals or their principles. So these are the declarations that they made. The first one, they pledged support. They pledged support to the United Nations towards international peace. So that was the first declaration. They pledged that they are going to support the United Nations in its quest to maintain international peace and security. Peace and security. That is their first declaration. And then number two, they emphasized on the importance of liberty of individuals. They emphasized on the importance of liberty of individuals. They emphasized the importance of liberty of individuals, their rights and freedom. So they acknowledge that every person, regardless of their race, regardless of their origin or where they come from, they have certain rights. They have their own liberties, rights, and freedoms. And these are not limited by someone's race. It's not limited by someone's origin, which was the case before that. Before now the process of independence, the Europeans thought they were a stronger or they were a better race compared to other people that had dark skin, right? So they consider themselves a superior race. But now from this declaration, they considered or they came to the acceptance that each and every human being, each and every person has their own personal liberties. They have their rights and freedoms, which are supposed to be taken seriously. And then number three, they pledged to remove all factors that promote discrimination. They pledged to remove all factors that contribute to discrimination and spread of wealth. So anything that contributed to inequalities in distribution of wealth was supposed to be removed. For example, if a country was going to take over another country, that is a factor that obviously makes the country that has been invaded unable to effectively control their own resources. So they say that no country should be able to be discriminated in terms of their wealth. And then number four, they opposed all forms of colonial domination. They opposed all forms of colonial domination. They opposed all forms of colonial domination. That means that the members of Commonwealth had zero tolerance to any kind of colonization. No country was supposed to be colonized. So that means every nation that is supposed to be a member of Commonwealth could not colonize any other country, and any colonies that are held by members of the Commonwealth were supposed to be ceded, and they were supposed to be done away with. And then second last, that is number 5, the second last principle is that they were to allow free trade within members. So they were supposed to put in place measures to promote trade amongst the members. So members were allowed to trade internationally without so much restrictions. So the members of Commonwealth had an upper hand of trading with one another. That was another declaration that they made. This was in an effort to make sure that the countries or members of Commonwealth have stable economies. And then lastly, there was supposed to be international cooperation. International cooperation as a way of maintaining peace. That meant that the members of Commonwealth were supposed to work with one another. They were supposed to cooperate with one another in an effort to make sure that there is international peace. There is security amongst themselves. So no nation is supposed to advance against another. So they declared, the heads of state declared that they are supposed to, or they are going to cooperate amongst themselves and with other international organizations to make sure that there is peace, there is security, there is international calmness, there is international peace in the world. So those are the principles or the declarations that the heads of government made. And that now becomes the driving or the engine of the Commonwealth. These are the ideals in which each and every country that belongs to the or becomes a member of the Commonwealth is supposed to uphold and make sure that they are followed. So as we end our lesson, allow me now to give you a revision questions. And the questions are: number 1, identify the main features of Commonwealth. Countries. And then number 2, outline the driving principles of the Commonwealth. Number 1, identify the main features of the Commonwealth countries. That is the first question. And number 2, outline the driving principles of the Commonwealth countries. What are the principles or ideals of the Commonwealth countries? And with that, we have come to the end of our today's history and government lesson. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Greetings, students. Welcome to today's lesson. As a recap of what we did the last time, we talked about participle phrases. And in particular, we introduced that a participle phrase is a group, which is a group of words that functions as a participle. We went ahead to describe what a participle is, and we say that a participle is a verbal word that describes a noun. Okay, or maybe just say a verbal word that gives us more information about a noun, probably what the adjective does. But here, it's a verbal word. For example, we say that expected gives us more information about visitors. Okay, so that in a sentence you can have the expected visitors have arrived. So expected there is not used as a verb, rather it is used as a participle where it gives us more information about the noun visitors. So we went ahead to say that now, having said that participle phrases are a group of words that function as a participle, we say that they are also they are introduced by present participles or past participles. The phrase that is, so that we say that this participle phrase is normally introduced by a present participle or a past participle. For example, leaving the baby on the bed, Juma removed the pan from the fire. So this is an example of a present participle phrase. So that we have leaving the baby on the bed as a present participle phrase. We also went ahead to say that the action, that the present participle phrase is used to emphasize that the action in the participle phrase happens immediately before the action in the main phrase, so that both happen almost simultaneously. This action comes immediately after this other action. This action in the main sentence comes immediately before the action in the participle phrase. So the participle phrase is separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. For example, leaving the baby on the bed, comma, Juma removed the pan from the fire. For grammatical purposes, it is important that you separate it from the rest of the sentence using a comma. Now, this time we're going to look at past participle phrases. So remember we said that the participle phrase is normally introduced by either a present participle or a past participle. So when you look at the past participle phrase, so in such a case we will have the phrase will start with a past participle. For example, left on the bed, comma, the baby began crying. Or, having finished dinner, comma, we all went to sleep. So in both cases, they all begin with a what? A past participle phrase. And the second sentence again, it begins with a past participle phrase. Okay? So in this sense, the past participle is used to emphasize that the action in the participle phrase comes before the action in the main phrase. So the participle phrase, let me just say the function per se. The past participle phrase is used to indicate that the action in the participle phrase happens before the action in the main phrase. So the past participle phrase is used to indicate that the action in the participle phrase happens before the action in the main phrase. Let's come back to our examples. Left on the bed, comma, the baby began crying. So this action happens before this other action begins. It takes place before the other action in the main sentence. And this other sentence, having finished dinner, comma, we all went to sleep. Again, finishing dinner happens before going to sleep. Leaving the baby on the bed happens, the baby being left on the bed happens before the baby begins what? Crying. So I'm going to back to the second sentence, having finished dinner. I'm going to explain something about that. We can use having in front of a participle to indicate that one action finished before the other begins. So I'll just note that down. So having is also used with a past participle to indicate that one action is finished before the other begins. Okay, so having finished dinner happens before the going to sleep. Okay, let me add you one more example. Having left the baby on the bed, comma, Mary went outside. So let me read the sentence. Having left the baby on the bed, comma, Mary went outside. So the leaving the baby on the bed happens before this action happens before Mary going outside. So we can use having, or we can just use it on its own to indicate that that action happens before the other begins. Remember, the past participle is used to indicate that one action happens before the other begins. The action in the participle phrase takes place before the action in that is expressed in the main sentence. Okay. One thing we also need to know that when with the participle phrase, both actions need to refer to the same person. Both actions need to refer to the same person. The action of leaving the baby on the bed and going outside need to be performed by the same action, so that you can say that the two actions must refer to the same person. Okay? For example, it's Mary who leaves the baby on the bed, and it is Mary who goes outside. So why this? Why say that the two actions must refer to the same person? This is to help us avoid the idea of dangling participle phrases. This, when you ensure that the two actions refer to the same person, it also helps us to avoid ambiguity. It helps us to avoid the idea of dangling participle phrases. What are dangling participle phrases? These are just participle phrases that refer to different things. The action in the participle phrase is different performed by a different person. Okay, so the two actions do not correlate. The two actions, in the sense that the action in the participle phrase is not performed by the action in the main phrase. For example, we have said the dangling participle phrase. Here, the action in the participle phrase is performed by a different person and not the same as the one in the main phrase or sentence. So the dangling participle phrase, here the action in the participle phrase is performed by a different person and not the same as the one in the main phrase. Let me give you an example. Getting poor results. My parents were really upset. Okay, getting poor results. Sorry. Getting poor results, comma, my parents were really upset. Getting poor results, comma, my parents were really upset. We've said that the two actions must refer to the same person. So this one is a dangling participle phrase. Why? Because the getting poor results is not the same person as the one who was. My parents are not the ones who got the poor results. So the getting poor results is not performed by the parents. Let me write this clearly. Is not performed. This action of getting poor results is not performed by the parents. Okay? The parents are upset, but the idea here is now the student is the one who got poor results, but says my parents. So what follows here should be the person, the person who got poor results, but instead what has followed? My parents were really upset. It should have been getting poor results. I felt ashamed of myself. Or, for example, I really upset my parents. Okay, so be careful. Okay, so that when you're combining the two sentences, when you've been given an exercise where you're combining the two sentences, the two actions must refer to the same person to avoid what? The dangling participle phrase. Remember we said that the two actions must refer to the same person. Mary, the action in the main phrase, in the participle phrase, and the action in the main sentence must refer to the same person. All right? Now, here, the idea is that this action is not performed by my parents. That's why it looks like a dangling participle phrase. I'll give you more exercises to practice on it to avoid the idea of ambiguity and the idea of maybe having a participle phrase that looks like as if it is hanging. All right? Now, having said that, we can also add that the participle phrase, now that we know that the participle phrase can be introduced by either a present participle or a past participle. We say that the example of a present participle is like leaving the baby on the bed. Juma went outside, and another one left on the bed. The baby began crying. So either case, they're just used to give us more information about the noun in the sentence. In either case, only that the other one is in the present, and the next one is in the past. When you use the past one, it will be left. When you use the present one, again is the ing format. But the idea here is to know that the participle phrase is normally used to describe what? The noun in the main sentence. Now, one other use of the participle phrase. Okay. So I want to add one more example so that the meaning is more clear. I'm trying to emphasize the fact that, you can combine two sentences by making one a participle phrase, but now the two actions are not referring to the same person. So I'm going to give you another example that will show a dangling participle phrase, or a participle phrase that is not clear on who is performing the action. Now we have coming round the bend, Mount Kenya appeared in all its glory. Coming round the bend, comma, Mount Kenya appeared in all its glory. You see, in the sentence that we have here, coming round the bend should be performed by whatever follows the participle phrase. So we should be very we should be very careful so that when beginning the sentence with a participle phrase, the meaning must be clear, such that in this sentence, when you say coming round the bend, Mount Kenya appeared in all its glory, it means that it is Mount Kenya that came round the bend, which is something that can rarely happen. There's no way that Mount Kenya has now legs that it has started coming round the bend. So it's very important that we should be able to combine the sentences by making one a participle phrase, yes, but now we should be careful with what? With the meaning that we're trying to pass across. All right, so that we avoid the idea of the dangling participle phrase. The two actions must refer to the same person, and the same person must be something, credible, not something that brings out the idea of maybe the sentence is not so clear or something like that. Now, having said that, we have finished on the idea of the past participle phrases and present participle phrases. Remember, we say that present participle phrases, they are used to emphasize that the action comes immediately after the action in the participle phrase. The action in the main sentence comes immediately after the action in the participle phrase. Now, in the past participle phrase, the action in the participle phrase happens before the action in the main phrase. Now, another difference between the two is that in the present participle phrase, the sentence begins with a present participle, and in the past participle phrase, the sentence begins with a past participle. Now, we've also said that we should be careful with dangling participle phrases, such that the two actions must refer to the same person, okay, and the meaning must be more clear. All right. And having said that, I would want to add something more before we finish. That we say that language is very important, okay? Such that when you're writing your compositions, you should be able to show that you have ability, or maybe linguistic ability, to express it in various forms. And one way that teachers of English ensure that know that a student is competent is by the use of a variety of sentences. And one thing that a participle phrase can help a student is when you're writing that composition, you're avoiding the idea of simplicity. You are showing creativity. So how do you show creativity? By having a variety of sentences. So the participle phrase can be one way of ensuring that you have a variety of what? Sentences in your composition. All right? Let me give you that note that I've just talked about, such that we are looking at the participle phrase in its entirety, having distinguished it in the sense that we have present and past. Now, how can it be useful to you as a student? Even as you're doing the exercises, before you do the exercises, you should also know that this one is also helping me in my spoken and also in my written. When I'm speaking, someone will know that I know English because I'm using a variety of sentences, or even when writing, I'm using a variety of sentences. So the participle phrase, therefore, you can write that. Therefore, the participle phrase is useful in sentence transformation where two sentences are combined by making one a participle phrase. For example, the food, Maria washed the dishes. Okay. Let me just say, allow me to write this first sentence. Well, Maria finished the food, and then Maria washed the dishes. So we just have said that the participle phrase is useful in sentence transformation where two sentences are combined by making one a participle phrase. So we want to combine these two sentences by making one a participle phrase. The sentence reads, Maria finished the food, Maria washed the dishes. So when we combine the two, we'll say, having finished the food, Maria washed the dishes. So having finished the food, Maria washed the dishes. So that as you're writing, as you're speaking, you can always, create variety in the way you're speaking by using the what? The idea of a participle phrase. So having finished the food, Maria washed the dishes. So I want to give you a small assignment so that it can help you practice on the idea of the dangling participle phrase and the idea of the past and present participle phrase for exercise and maybe to master the skill well. All right. So let me give you one exercise here, two exercises. Okay, so improve the dangling expression to make them clear and sensible in the sentences below. Burdened under the weight of guilt, every day seemed like 1,000 years. Having finished, number 2, having finished the presentation, Cheptoo's mind went blank. Then we have turning to page 4, my eye was struck by the use of contrast. Then number 4, being made of porcelain, Jane handled the vase carefully. If you look at those sentences, there is some sense of lack of clarity. So I want you to improve them, okay, with the skill that I've just shown you. Make sure that whatever, the two actions must be performed by the person and it should be clear, all right, so that it doesn't create ambiguity or maybe the idea of dangling expressions. I want to add you one more exercise before we come to the end of our lesson. Using the past participle as directed, form one sentence from the pair given. So question 1, the girls talked non-stop. They reminisced from dawn to dusk. This is R. They reminisced. They reminisced from dawn to dusk. Use a present participle now to combine the two sentences. The kite rose beyond the treetops. It seemed to dance in the wind. Use a present participle. So combine the two sentences by making one a participle phrase, but it should be a present participle phrase. He was stranded in the dark alley, question 3. The little boy slept. Use a past participle. Question 4. The house help had washed her clothes. She hung them on the wash line. Use a past participle. Number 5. The salesgirl had wrapped the gift. She handed it to the customer. Use a past participle. So in all the sentences, you will follow the instructions given in the brackets, ensuring that you combine the two sentences by making one a participle phrase. Now it will either depend on what has been mentioned in the brackets. If it is present, combine it by making one a present participle phrase, and maybe if it is past, combine it by making one a participle phrase. Now we have come to the end of the lesson. Next time we're going to look at something else.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello learners, our topic today is energy changes in physical and chemical processes. I want us to go through the chapter objectives first. Our first chapter objective, by the end of this chapter, you should be able to define endothermic and exothermic reactions. Our second objective is that by the end of this chapter also, you should be able to draw the energy level and energy cycle diagrams. Then our objective number 3 should be able to explain fusion and vaporization in respect to interparticle forces. Our objective number 4 should be able to explain energy changes in chemical reactions due to bond breaking and bond formation. Our fifth objective is define and explain the various types of heat changes. Our sixth objective, you should be able to carry out some experiments to determine enthalpy changes for some reactions. Our seventh objective, you should be able to write correct simple thermochemical equations. So that's our seventh objective. You should be able to write simple thermochemical equations. Then our eighth objective, you should be able to state Hess law and carry out related calculations. So state Hess law and carry out related calculations, because there are various calculations which are involved in Hess law. Then our ninth objective, you should be able to state and explain the factors that influence the choice of a fuel. So state and explain the various factors that influence the choice of a fuel. And our last objective will be explain the environmental effects of fuels. So explaining the environmental effects of fuels. So those are our chapter objectives. So by the end of this chapter, that is what you need to have understood at the end of it all. So the topic is energy changes in physical and chemical processes. You remember again in Form 1, the second topic, which was simple classification of substances, we talked about temporary and permanent changes. So temporary changes, you see that those are the changes which do not lead to formation of new substances, while the permanent changes are those changes which involves the formation of new substances. A good example in physical changes, we gave the example of solid wax, that when you heat solid wax, this solid wax now turns to a liquid. When you cool this liquid, then you'll get back the solid wax. Another example is heating zinc oxide. Zinc oxide is white in color. So when you heat zinc oxide, the color of zinc oxide will change from white to yellow. And when you cool this yellow hot zinc oxide, you'll get back the white zinc oxide. Those are examples of temporary changes, which are also called physical changes. So in permanent changes, give the example of heating copper 2 nitrate. Copper 2 nitrate is blue in color. So when you heat the blue copper 2 nitrate, it leads to formation of copper 2 oxide nitrogen oxide gas, and oxygen gas. So these two gases will escape into the atmosphere. So you cannot now get back the original copper 2 nitrate. Those are some of the things now you need to remember as we go through this topic, energy changes in physical and chemical processes. I give you two examples of physical processes, which were the candle wax, that one, the candle wax, and also the zinc oxide. Then in permanent changes, which is also called the chemical processes, that I've given you the example of copper 2 nitrate. So those are some of the things you need to remember as we go through this topic, because they will be of great importance in this topic. Just to do a recap of these chapter objectives, by the end of the chapter, you, the learner, should be able to, 1, define endothermic and exothermic reactions. Number 2, you should be able to draw energy level and energy cycle diagrams. Number 3, you should be able to explain fusion and vaporization in terms of interparticle forces. Number 4, you should be able to explain energy changes in chemical reactions due to bond breaking and bond formation. Number 5, you should be able to define and explain the various types of heat changes. Number 6, you should be able to carry out experiments to determine the enthalpy changes for some reactions. Number 7, you should be able to write simple, correct thermochemical equations. Number 8, you should be able to state Hess law and carry out related calculations. Number 9, you should be able to state and explain the various factors that influence the choice of a fuel. And the last one, you should be able to explain the environmental effects of fuels. So those are objectives you need to have, so that by the end of this chapter, then you will have achieved what is expected. So that is the end of our lesson. I have been your teacher, Mr. Mwaniki Nyaga. Then in our next lesson, we will be defining some important terms like energy, physical processes, and chemical processes. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Welcome, learners. My name is Stephen Kariungi, and we continue with our topic of discussion. And the topic is genetics, a topic offered in Form 4 biology. So during our previous lesson, we discussed the first law of inheritance, that is known as the law of segregation. And we explained why Mendel, that is Gregor Mendel, the father of modern genetics, was very successful in his experiments as opposed to those biologists who had carried out similar experiments before. Now, today I would like us to discuss something that is called monohybrid inheritance. Now, monohybrid inheritance is a terminology that is founded from the first law, which is the law of segregation. And this particular concept says that each particular trait is inherited independently of the other trait. For example, if you're looking at how a trait such as tallness is inherited, then you should just narrow down to tallness and not relate that with another trait, maybe such as the skin color or such as sex or such as another trait as may be. So this concept is borrowed from the law of segregation, which stated that the characteristics of an organism, or each characteristic in an organism, is determined by a pair of hereditary factors, and only each one of those factors exist in a gamete. So the monohybrid inheritance explains that each characteristic is inherited independent of another. Each characteristic explains that each characteristic is inherited independent of another. For example, tallness has no relationship with skin color in terms of how they are inherited. In terms of how they are inherited. Now, I would like us to look at some of the experiments that were carried out by Mendel. And for example, we look at examples of Mendel's experiments. For example, where he took some tall plants, that is the garden pea, and crossed them with other tall plants, obtained the seeds from there, and then planted them, only to get a mixture of tall and short, which you can also call as dwarf. So that by crossing a tall plant and a tall plant, we are getting a mixture of tall and short. And therefore, the conclusion is that there are some traits of shortness in this plant. And there are some traits of shortness in this plant, and that's where we are getting the dwarf plants. He also said that when you cross the short against the short, let me say the short plant, and then the short plant, in this experiment, he got only short plants. So that is one of the experiments. This is another experiment. So by crossing a short plant and getting only short plants, that is to mean the conclusion here was that the short plants were pure breeds. They were pure breeds. So the conclusion in the first case is that tall plants had factors of shortness in them, and that's why we are getting a mixture. But in the second experiment, the conclusion, by crossing a short and a short plant, it means that the short plants were pure breeds, that is, had factors for shortness only, So I repeat there, in the examples of experiments carried out by Mendel, the first one, by crossing the tall and the tall plants, that is the garden pea, the offspring or the products obtained were a mixture of tall and short. And that's an indication that the shortness was still there even in the tall plants. So the tall plants had factors of shortness in them. But after crossing the short plants, he only got short offspring or a short generation. And that means that the short plants were pure breeds that had the shortness only. So here, from the two experiments, or from the above experiments, Mendel concluded that some factors, now what we are calling the genes, are dominant over others. Some factors are dominant over others, e.g., tallness dominates over shortness. Tallness dominates over shortness. And therefore, shortness can only express itself in the absence of tallness. Hence, short plants were pure breeds, breeds. Now, based on that, we are going to look at some terminologies used in genetics, the terminologies that we came up with from these experiments. One, we have seen that the tallness is dominating over the shortness. That is why the shortness is not expressing itself. So we have one, a dominant gene. This is a gene that expresses itself in the presence of a weaker gene, i.e. suppresses. It suppresses the weaker gene. Then we have the recessive gene is a suppressed gene, i.e. cannot express itself in the presence of the dominant gene. So, in conclusion here, the dominant gene, e.g., was the tallness gene, the gene for tallness. And the recessive gene, the suppressed one, is the shortness gene. So we have what we call a dominant gene and a recessive gene. So you'll have an assignment on this. So the assignment, the first question, what is A, dominant gene, B, a recessive gene? And number 2, explain why in Mendel's experiments, tall plants gave rise to a mixture of tall and short when self-pollinated. We'll stop there until next time. Goodbye.
So before we go on, in our previous lesson we looked at phrases. We talked about the noun phrase, the types of phrases, how a phrase is a group of words that functions as a single unit. And we looked at the various types of phrases. We looked at verb phrases, we looked at noun phrases, adjectival, prepositional, adverbial phrases, and we say that they are just groups of words but will function as that unit. That unit could be a verb, that unit could be an adjective, the unit could be an adverb, the unit could be a preposition, depending on how they are in a sentence. But now they are functioning as a group. So today we're looking at now another group of words that will function as a, we're looking at participle phrases. It will be the same thing. But now, before we go to participle phrases, we'll need to remind ourselves what a participle is. Because for it to function as a participle phrase, it must be a group of words. So I can just say it is a group of words that functions, a group of words that functions as a participle in a sentence. So this participle phrase. So what is a participle? So a participle, if we remind ourselves clearly, is a word, just a minute, is a verbal word that functions as an adjective. It's a verbal word that functions as an adjective. So that, what is a verbal word? For example, interesting. Interesting. Another word is arrived. These are verbal words. But now we're looking at them as we are looking at them as functioning as what? Adjectives. So that we can say interesting movie. Arrived, just not arrived, but expected guests. Tired visitors. So all these three words here, interesting, expected, tired, they are verbs, but they are functioning as what? Adjectives. What is an adjective? It's a word that gives us more information about a noun. So which movie? The interesting one. Which guests? The ones that we were expecting. Which visitors? The tired ones. Okay? Which pool? The swimming pool. Which baby? The crying baby. So that we say, when they function as an adjective, they're giving us more information about the baby. That's what an adjective does. So today we're looking at how a participle, a phrase, will function as an adjective. Because when we say that a group of words that function as a participle, we're looking at a group of words that function as an adjective. The only difference will be that there'll be no adjective in that sentence like an adjectival phrase. There'll be a participle. Okay? And before we go on, we have different types of participles. We have the present participle, which is normally called the ing participle. And then we have the number 2, we have the past participle, which is called the ed stroke en participle. So that here, this participle again will be functioning as an adjective, but in an ing form or an ed stroke en participle. So when we begin with present participle, they are in form of an ing. For example, interesting, crying. Okay, they are ing participles. So, and then under, for example, now we have interesting movie, crying baby. So the underlined words are the participles. And then now past participles. Will be the ed stroke en ones. So that we have expected, we have stolen, we have broken, so that we can have expected guests have arrived. The stolen bicycle, the broken window. Okay, so broken here is not functioning as a verb. Stolen here is not functioning as a verb. It is functioning as an adjective. It is giving us more information about the adjective, the noun. The noun window, the noun bicycle, and the noun guests. So that when we say, now we're going to look at, we've looked at what a participle is, the types of participles, and now we're going to look at in a broader perspective, that is now in the participle phrase perspective. So now present participles, in a sentence that has a present participle. So when a sentence has a present participle, what does it mean? That the action in the main sentence, in the previous sentence, in the participle sentence, happens before the one in the main sentence happens. Now that we've learned what a participle is, we've reminded ourselves what a participle